guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Kenny. I am so excited to bring you guys this video because I've had several recommendations for it. I just wanted to go through my drawer of brushes and pull out a few of my favorite ones and kind of explain the uses that I typically use them for. All of the brushes that I purchase are not high-end. You can purchase them at Ulta or CVS or any drugstore. I typically don't go for the higher end brands simply because I just don't believe in spending a lot of money when it comes to cosmetic tools. And you know, it's just because I used to have these in college and they did me well. So you'll see a few of these brushes that may be on the higher end, but as far as most of them, they are pretty affordable. I hope you guys like the information that I give you in this video. Stay tuned. Okay guys, so I thought to come up with a different setup. I wanted to pull out a few of my favorite brushes and kind of go over a few ways that I use them. Typically when it comes to brushes, I know they're all marketed either for foundation, for concealer, bronzer, blush, all that type of stuff. I have made these brushes work for myself. So I'm gonna tell you what it's initially for and then tell you what I use it for. So I know just in case I forget, I will try to leave everything down below, and I'll try to put a note telling you what type of brush it is as well. But feel free to leave me any comments, especially if you're wanting to get these brushes. I 100% recommend them. I just want to say that now simply because I've had these brushes. I need to probably re-up because I've had them well over 2 years. So these brushes are very long lasting. So let's get into it. Started guys, I want to mention a few things. One thing that I'm going to keep saying, I want to make sure you guys understand it, is the word dense. When it comes to finding brushes that are dense, it means that it's the brushes or the bristles in the head are closely compact, meaning that there are more bristles in the head compared to a less dense brush. Why does this help you? You may ask, is if you're wanting a full coverage foundation or a full coverage look, you want to make sure you go for a dense brush. So whenever you're looking for a brush, you want to maybe, like I have two options here, you maybe want to go for a brush like this because it is a little bit more dense, it has more bristles, versus a brush like this. And so when I first learned about brushes, they said when you're putting your finger over it, doesn't move easily. So if it moves a little bit easier than another brush, that means it's less dense. This is just, once again, I'm not a makeup professional, but this is just an easy way for me to remember full coverage versus more of a natural look. So that is one word that I'll be saying throughout this entire video. So if you guys, if I confuse you throughout the video, please leave comments down below, but hopefully it doesn't get too confusing. Okay guys, so we're gonna go in with my first brush. This used to be one of my favorites when I used to like going for a full coverage look. It's very dense. It has a flat top, meaning that it contours my face very easily. If you look at my face and if you look at the brush, it lays flat on my face, which is great. So that means when you're kind of stippling your face out or packing the makeup in, it packs in very well. This here is the ECOTOOLS Complexion Buffer Brush, and I love it. It's typically, that one was marketed for bronzer because typically bronzer you want to lay on a little bit heavy and be able to buff it out. I use that one for foundation simply because I've just seen it work a little bit better for me with foundation because it gets in the areas that I need. I have more problem areas like the hyperpigmentation spots around my cheeks or around my mouth. It packs in those spots without me having to use too much foundation. Next brush that I'll be going over here is the ECOTOOLS Skin Perfecting Brush. This brush is amazing. This is probably one of my favorite go-to brushes. It has a perfect dome shape, so that means that I can, it's dense in the middle, and then it has, it's more of an airbrush fanned out look. So the reason why I like this is because when I'm applying my makeup, if I want to get more of a full coverage look, I can press it in a little bit more more, or if I want to have more of a natural look, I can just twirl it. So this here, that type of brush is easier to use if you are wanting to build your foundation. The next two brushes are similar. The first one is going to be the OG. It's the E.L.F. Cosmetics buffing brush. It's the Complexion blending brush. I apologize. This brush is probably the densest brush you can get, or back in the day, this is the densest brush you could get when it came to drugstore products. E.L.F. came out with an amazing line of foundation brushes, and I love it. One thing that I like to mention, if you see buffing, that is a word that I typically go for, because brands will market a brush as buffing or complexion. They'll say complexion or buffing. Those are like, oh, okay, that's probably gonna be my foundation brush. So don't be afraid of brushes if they're not necessarily shaped like you would think that they would need to be shaped. As far as what you're usually used to. Next brush that I typically like, this one here is the Real Cosmetics buffing brush, another buffing brush. I go in and I typically put a few dots on my face, which I do this with all of my foundation brushes, and I just kind of work it out. These last three brushes that I've mentioned, the buffing brushes, they're really good to be able to use if you are working with medium to full coverage foundation. The first brush, I have learned that is only typically for full coverage foundation, because it works really well with thicker foundations, not necessarily loose or wetter foundations, simply because that brush, since it has so many bristles and it is shaped like a flat top, I've learned that it kind of strips at your face. So if you want full coverage foundation and that's all you want to do, go for the first brush. If you want natural foundation and be able to build it up, go for the last three brushes. So back in the day, I used to use these painter brushes, like as I say. This one here is going to be the Real Techniques prep brush. I like using this one. You can use this for a face mask. You can use this for actually blending in your foundation. That's what you used to do back in the day. I don't do that because it just doesn't work for me. But typically what I like to do, I'll squirt my foundation on the back of my hand. I'll take this brush here and I'll swipe the foundation. I'll prep my foundation or my face with my foundation with this brush. So I'll do 3 stripes, 1, 2, 3, and then I'll go in with my foundation brush and blend it out. The reason why I like using brushes like that is because it allows me to have a more of an even complexion after I get done blending out my makeup. If you have a problem with blending out your makeup evenly, I would definitely try to maybe look into a brush like that, because when I started using that brush, it allowed me to not necessarily overpack certain areas. So after I do the 3, I blend it out, and if I need more in the certain areas, then I'll go in and put just a little bit more with those. So this here allows you not to have to put the foundation immediately on your brush, and then it helps you save foundation in the end. So let's go to bronzer. When it comes to bronzer, now bronzer, so okay, I like to use, I don't necessarily understand if bronzer and contour are 2 different things. I don't think they are. So I'll just, if you hear bronzer and if you hear contour, think the same thing. But I'll keep saying bronzer because that's how the products are marketed. First one is going to be the OG. This is the E.L.F. blending brush. I like this one because it was marketed to be able to get right into your cheeks. So typically when I'm applying my contour, I just go right into my cheeks here, and then it packs it in really tight, and then I can buff it out. So that one is a nice one to go with if you like a more dramatic contour. Okay, so if you're wanting more of a subtle buildable contour look, or a brush that can allow you to build up on your product, this is a good brush. This is ECOTOOLS Define and Highlight Duo Pack. I love this brush simply because it's not too dense, so it allows me to have more of an airbrush look and like a sun touched look. So I really like using that brush if I am going for more, not as not so dramatic, but I want to still have my cheekbones pop. So that is a really good brush if you're wanting to have something in your arsenal for bronzer. Not say if you don't use bronzer every day or if you don't use contour every day, it's really good. And then one thing that I like about this, that you can hit your temples as well. The other brush is not necessarily, simply because it's so dense, so it will put too much product in that area. So if you were to look for contour brushes, those will be the best brushes that I would recommend. Okay guys, so we've talked about bronzers, we talked about foundation brushes, we've talked about skin prepping brushes. Let's talk about concealer. I typically don't use that many concealer brushes simply because I use beauty blenders, but if I were to use a concealer brush, I do have the Real Techniques medium shadow brush. This is an eyeshadow brush, perfect example of me saying that I use some products for different reasons. The reason why I like this one is because it fits right under my eyes perfectly, and then it allows me to get to my waterline without affecting my eyes too much. Sometimes the beauty blender kind of creeps into my waterline and then I start crying. This here is perfect because, like I told you, all I do is I go in here and then I buff it out, and then it has enough landscape to where you don't have to worry about it becoming streaky because you don't have to keep going over the same spot. Sometimes concealer brushes, what I've found, and the reason why I don't like them, is that they are too small, and so I have to keep going over the same area. And then since I'm heavy-handed, or I used to be heavy-handed, I would typically pick up the makeup, but this one here does a great job. So like I told you before, sometimes you can use different brushes for different purposes. The only other concealer brush that I use is going to be the ECOTOOLS Duo Stick. This is the highlighting concealer brush. I love this. When I tell you I love it. I typically use the dome end to carve out my eyebrows. So if I am going to be finishing up my eyebrows, I go in, I'll kind of come closer, I'll go in and make sure that I clean them up. So I'll use this brush typically only for that. I only like that because it's dense enough to where it doesn't move, especially if I have a shaky hand. This is one tip here. So say if you have a shaky hand, if you have a dense brush, you don't have to worry about messing up. So you just put your I'll put my wrist on my chin, and then I'll just line it all the way through. So hopefully that tip helps. But I use this one here for that, and then I'll use this other side. I'll go in and take a little powder, little highlight powder, and cover the concealer that I've done with my eyebrows over. I'll take a little foundation powder or a little highlight powder depending on how I feel, and this here helps my eyebrows last a little bit longer, because sometimes when I carve my eyebrows out, the concealer doesn't last, and it's because you just don't set it. I will go years and years and years and I would forget to set my eyebrows. That is one thing that if you want your makeup to last, a good night out, you're about to be partying, you're drinking, you're sweating, you're dancing, you're doing all that stuff, make sure to set your eyebrows. That's all I can say. Okay, so we're moving guys. I have two last categories. We have highlight and contour, and then we have powder brushes. So I'm gonna go over the highlight and contour brushes first. First brush that I will say that I do not have another option for is my blush brush. All these brushes that you guys have seen, I more than likely have another option down here below, but these are the ones that I usually go for first. This is the Real Techniques blush brush, and this is the Sam and Nick collection. When I tell you guys this brush is amazing, it is. So what I like to do when I'm applying my blush is I like to spray it with a little bit of rose water or setting spray, and then that allows your blush to intensify. So if you ever say, man, my blush is not showing up, do that tip. I promise you it'll work. So one of my favorites, can't go without, is going to be the Real Techniques highlighter brush. When I tell you guys this brush is amazing, it's just dense enough. I've used some brushes that were too dense. I've used some brushes that were too thin. Sometimes when it comes to the fans, you want to make sure that it's not too thin because you don't want it to strip your makeup, especially if you're heavy-handed. once again. So this here is nice because it has more of a softer texture because there's so many bristles in it. So I just go in and I buff this thing out, if you know what I'm saying. So I can be a little bit more heavy-handed with this brush simply because it allows me to buff it in and allows me to spread the product over my cheekbones in a more of a, it's more progressive versus than it being all at one time. Okay, so we're wrapping it up, guys. So I've already talked about all of these, guys. So I'm down to my favorite brushes. These brushes are brushes that I'm still doing research on, seeing if I won't say seeing if I like them, but I've kind of dabbled in back and forth when it comes to powder brushes. But these are a few brushes that I thought I wanted to mention to you guys. 2 of them are new. Well, actually, I would say all of these I purchased in the last year, so I've been using them separately. The first brush that I have here is going to be the ECOTOOLS bronze brush. Like I mentioned, this is a brush that I can use here for, how do you say, more of a airbrush look because it has the duo fibers. I like using this one for applying my finishing powder. Next, I have a tapered foundation brush, or I'm sorry, I have a tapered powder brush, which is from ECOTOOLS. I got this one when they had, Ulta had their beauty steals last year. ECOTOOLS is very expensive, but I understand why, because this is made, the framing is made out of steel. Compared to my other brushes, I can see that this brush will last a little bit longer, but does that really matter to me? I'm not really sure. So this brush is nice. It is targeted and marketed for somebody that wants to have an airbrush look. I like that one simply because sometimes when I used to apply my finishing powder, I would put it on too much and then it would darken up everything that I put on my face, especially my highlight. So I just go in with this brush and just swirl it around my face, and it gives me a flawless look. These brushes here are the brushes that I typically use. If there are any brushes that you guys have been wondering why I didn't mention, of course I didn't mention eye brushes because if you didn't know already, I do not do eye makeup. I tried to do a little something for y'all today, but don't get used to it. But I hope that you guys like this video, and that's pretty much it. Thanks, guys. Come back for another one. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I wanted you guys to know that I am having a giveaway. If you guys didn't know, I am trying to get to my first goal, which is 150 subscribers. Then my next goal will be to 500. But, you know, my husband was talking to me and he says, hey, don't put limits on yourself. See how many subscribers you can get till May 1st. So I was like, you know, how about, why not try? So since you guys have been so committed and so supportive, I wanted to make sure I had 2 giveaways. First one is going to be on Facebook. Second one is going to be on Instagram. Please make sure that you're following me. I'm going to try to leave the information down below telling you how to be able to enter the contest. But most of the products are going to be beauty related. So if you don't like beauty products, it may not be the giveaway for you, but there'll be some products that I mentioned in my my January, February, March favorites videos, and then just some other products that I think you guys would love. But as you know, of course, you're gonna have to make sure you subscribe, and then there are going to be a few other things that I need you to do. But if you've already stayed tuned to the end of this video, you guys are already, you know, in the loop. So I just want to let you guys know that, and then I'll be posting the deets soon. Y'all have a good one. And wait a second, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe before I even put this giveaway out. Because if you ain't subscribed, how you think you're gonna win? How? And then y'all tell me how y'all like this video, okay? Bye.